iTestify is about testifying of what Jesus Christ has done and can do in each of our lives. Through testimony of people just like you and through study of His Word, our prayer is to encourage each follower of Christ to be a light in this world. So let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Matthew 5:16.
Hello, welcome to another episode of iTestify. We're glad to have you today. And we're also excited because we have with us our guest, Kristi Huynh, and she wants to tell us about her testimony. So I'm going to turn the time over to her. Just take us back to the beginning, Kristi. Tell us where it all started.
Okay, thank you. So I guess to start off, I was not raised in an Adventist home. My dad is a Buddhist and my mom was a nominal Christian. A Baptist Christian, and I wasn't exposed to Adventism until my brother was studying the Bible at 13, and he came upon the Sabbath, and he had questions about it. So he asked the pastor of the church, can I have Bible studies? And the pastor said, "You're too young for that. Why don't you just stick with the little kids class?" And so he kept kind of struggling with the Sabbath truth and specifically prophecy. And then one day, he kind of came to a bulletin board at the church, at the Baptist church, and somebody posted a Revelation Speaks Peace poster. It's a evangelistic series, and at that time it was run by Pastor Mark Finley. And that's where my brother and my grandma gave their life to God, and that's when we were introduced to the Adventist faith. And so we started attending this little Vietnamese church in El Monte, and so I kind of grew up in the church, but not really.
You're younger than your brother?
Yes, I am, although many people think I'm not. Yeah, and that's before we talk. So. Yes, and I think I grew up in the church. I was kind of always looking for approval from other people, and being a young Adventist in a public school campus was very difficult. I went to an elementary public school, middle school, and then high school, public school throughout. So I always wanted to belong, but being kind of Adventist was very difficult for me because I didn't fit in. I didn't do things on Fridays or Saturdays. I didn't eat the same way that other people ate. And so
that must have been really difficult for you as a personality who wanted approval from others and wanted belonging.
Yeah, definitely. And being in a public school campus in high school was very challenging for me because a lot of the teachers, although they cared, they, to put it lightly, didn't really like the idea of having God in the picture. So I would have debates in class with my teachers. I remember talking about how I believed that the world was created in 7 days with a teacher, and he kind of made fun of me in front of the class. But I respected the teacher, and I kept a good relationship with him still. And let's see, it was just very difficult. But it was during those trying times when I had to realize, okay, what do I believe in? Do I believe that creation is a real thing? Like, is this Adventist thing even worth it? Because I'm so different from my family and my friends. It was during that time when I would go back to the leaders in my church and discuss things with them and throw them hard questions about evolution, about the validity of the Bible, about social issues that we have, including feminism and homosexuality, all these things that I thought were taboo to talk about. I talked about it with my church leaders, and I really am thankful looking back now that they didn't brush it off and they didn't say, "You're too young for that," or "Let's not talk about these things." They opened up the Bible and, just like God said, let's come and reason together. That's what they did for me. And that's when I think in high school was when it started becoming real. Like, I do believe in this not because my brother wants me to believe in it, not because it's cool. By no means it was not cool. But because I found truth, and I want to live it out. So yeah.
Yeah, and you had said that you didn't have a lot of support from your family too, so it was just you and your brother?
Yeah, just me and my brother.
Okay.
My grandma passed away when I was in 4th grade, so even though she was a God-fearing woman, she wasn't in the picture for a lot of my childhood. Yeah. So afterwards, when I think kind of going parallel with this is my struggle with finding my faith in finding truth, but also a struggle to belong was still there in my heart. So I did that through academics. I really wanted to be known as the smart person in my school. And I think it was my junior or sophomore year of high school when I got my first B. I know this sounds really nerdy. I cried all night. It was like the worst thing that could have possibly happened to me at that time. But looking back now, it was such a blessing because it was when I got that first B that I realized, hey, my identity isn't getting the straight A's. It's not being the smart student. It's in God. So that was a shift in mindset for me. It was such a blessing. So when it came time to apply to colleges, I really, again, wanted to belong. So I applied to all the Adventist colleges that I could think of. My dream school was actually Southern, but I also applied to public schools as well. And when I had the decision to choose between UC Berkeley or Southern, I really wanted to go to Southern because I thought, this is my chance. Like, I can go to a school where other people think like me. But something in my heart, and I think in devotionals, God was trying to teach me, it's not about you. Like, I'm sure for other people, I know that colleges, like deciding where you should go for college is a very important decision. And sometimes it is going to that Adventist college. But other times, in my case, I felt like God was saying, you've seen the work that needs to be done in a public school campus. You've been there. And I need you to go to a place where it's not going to be comfortable. You're not going to belong. It's going to be probably the most antagonistic campus for Christians in the United States, possibly, right? But I want you to go. And so I just said, Lord, where do you want me to go? Where can I grow the most? And where can I bless the most people? And his answer was UC Berkeley.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So are you there currently? Or
No, I graduated a couple years ago.
Oh, wow. And then what did you graduate in? Tell more about your experience at that campus.
Yeah. It was a very isolating experience. I think that a lot of Adventist students who go on secular campuses can relate. I remember the summer before I went on campus, I went to a conference, a Bible conference, and I asked people to pray for me because I knew that it was going to be a tough 4 years. And I'm sure that person meant well, but somebody came up to me and said, you shouldn't go to Berkeley. It's a very dark place. And I agree, it's a dark place, but because it's dark, we need to go. Like, there are people there that need to know the truth, and we can't just be in a place that's comfortable for us. So when I went to Berkeley, I had friends, but they were more acquaintances. I think there were only a handful of us who were actually Adventist. And it was very discouraging. I remember going back home often and just crying and telling God, like, why did you send me here? Why am I, like, I'm so different. I don't belong. Like, my professors don't love you. It's so difficult here. Why are you sending me here? And I remember reading a little book called Help in Daily Living at that time, which I now know is, it comes from Ministry of Healing. But Ellen White talks about how, and this isn't verbatim, but she says, God is like a master who wants to teach a bird how to sing a song. But when that bird is surrounded by so many other things, it kind of hears little tidbits of that song, but it doesn't really internalize it and memorize the song. But then he goes and takes that bird and kind of puts it in a dark place, away from everything. But that's where the bird commits that song to memory and knows it for itself. So I felt like, man, that was speaking to me. Like, I was that bird that was kind of wanting to know God, but so distracted with other things, seeking approval from people and trying to belong. But when God took me to Berkeley, to a place where I was completely a fish out of water, and where I didn't belong and where I questioned my identity a lot, that was where I learned about God the most. And that was ironically where I grew the most, in a secular university. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about Berkeley. Did you start any Bible studies there? Did you meet anyone there who you thought, oh, okay, I can reach out to them?
Or like involved in community or school projects where like, you know, you can meet people to witness to or something like that?
Yes. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Adventist Christian Fellowship.
Yes.
Yes.
That was the first group that I was with for a couple years at Berkeley. And that group was a blessing. We had Bible studies, and I found myself reaching out to Adventists that were on campus and people who, I guess, came to Berkeley looking for something else. I think that they were kind of tired of being Adventists, but culturally they wanted to come to church. So I found myself ministering to them, but also reaching out to other Christians from other denominations on campus. And I found that so many other Christians who weren't Adventists were very passionate about Jesus. Like, their faith inspired me. And although we didn't agree on everything, I found in them really great friends. And so I witnessed to them. I wrote, I joined a kind of like a Christian journal organization, and my first topic was about hellfire, so I just snuck that in there a little bit. So I really, I tried my best to witness to the people around me, to other Christians, to also non-believers.
It makes me think I see a lot of parallels with the story of Jonah in the Bible. Like,
So true.
God wanted him to go to Nineveh, right? But he wanted to go to some place easy, like Tarshish instead. And so I think maybe for you, who knows how it would have turned out? Like you described, that Southern would have been like easy because people think like you. And so it sounds like you never did go to an Adventist campus. So it's hard to say what your experience would have been. But just saying, it's very possible. Like it's very possible to become lukewarm and just to blend in with the culture there. And just like you said, there's people that want to culturally come to church. You can find a lot of that. And so maybe God knew that that wasn't the place for you to take the next step in faith. He wanted you to go to Nineveh in this case, right?
Yeah, that's a great parallel. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your home church. I think I'm a bit familiar with El Monte, and I always call it a tiny but mighty church. Because, in fact, I think there's a little bit of a parallel with your life and that church, because I just, it's off of the freeway, and it's right in the middle of this busy intersection, just right on the corner. And it's this small church, but there's so much life inside of it when you go in. So it's like this little isolated beacon of light, I feel, in the midst of this busy city. And in a sense, I think that it's quite similar to what God wanted for your life, how you were this light, not in and of yourself, but because of Him, in the middle of this dark college. So I wanted to ask more about, you said that you were supported by your church leaders and that they helped you to understand the Bible more, answer your questions. What was your church life like back then, and how are you connected with them still now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, I want to affirm again that I attribute so much of my faith to the young church leaders at that time who weren't shy about answering my questions. I think that we created a culture where it was such a delight to go to church on Saturdays. Let's see, I really liked how my pastor really encouraged young people to step up in leadership. like currently I'm on the board of my church. And I know that many people my age may not have that opportunity because they're deemed a little bit too young. But when we look at our Adventist history, young people like rocked this church, like we established it, right? So I believe that my pastor, he is amazing in the sense that he challenges young people to take on leadership. And so I found that after I learned the Bible and everything, I am now challenged to kind of teach the next generation. And I'm able to do that because my pastor really believes in instilling leadership qualities in the young people.
Amen.
You know, I was talking to you before, and you mentioned that you're an elementary school teacher. Are you able, and you also talked about your negative or interesting experience that you had growing up and going to school. Do you feel like now you're able to share things with, you know, your students, or do you feel like they come to you with questions or anything like that? I was just curious to see how that went.
Yeah, so it's actually my first year teaching. I will be starting next week, actually, at an elementary school. And it's a public school, and I would like to teach at an Adventist institution. It didn't work out this year, but we'll see about next year. I think that there's definitely work to be done at the public school campus as well in terms of elementary school, because the community that I'm teaching at, it's an underserved community, and there are a lot of kids from tough backgrounds there. So yes, there's work to be done as well.
Yeah, but you'll be able to probably draw on your experiences going through, you know, public education too, right? You might be able to spot out that kid or two that is, you know, looking for something more.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to minister to them.
Yeah.
And just like, I think the good installation of morals for children is hard. I mean, sometimes, you know, sometimes their parents don't know either, but you look at the background where they come from, there's no way they would learn it from their parents to begin with. And since, you know, unfortunately, they're in public school all the time and they're being taught by other people, I guess, you know, it's kind of like an opportunity for you to help them in that sense. So it's
Yes, definitely.
an amazing position you're in.
And when people, I guess when I ask people like, who's your favorite teacher growing up, or who's a memorable teacher, I might be biased, but it's usually an elementary school teacher, right, or middle school perhaps. It's during those times when you're finding your identity, when you're finding that security, that the influencers around you are important, especially the adults that you can trust. Yeah.
Did that influence your decision to become an elementary school teacher?
I actually went to school for law. I thought that I wanted to do something related to law or policy work. So I studied legal studies. I studied, after I graduated, I started studying for the LSAT, working at a law firm, and I realized it wasn't for me. I think that if I could somehow marry education and law, that would still be a dream job of mine. But at that time, I think that God was trying to teach me, Kristi, you're going into this for the wrong reasons. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something, right? I had the ability to go to law school. I had people tell me, you went to a great school, you're kind of wasting your time and your talents by becoming a teacher. But I think that they're missing the point. Like, again, Jonah, right? If he's calling me to go one way, who am I to say I should go a different direction? Because I think that somehow in my limited scope of things that it's better. So right now it's education, it's becoming a teacher, but we'll see where the Lord takes me next.
Yeah, I'm thankful that you have that perspective, because a lot of times we can get things flipped around. Like, I think we should have the perspective that, you know, we're here to be missionaries and to be witnesses first, and then our occupation is sort of just a tool that, you know, we can use to contact people, and we all have different strengths and different, you know, areas. So the occupation should just, you know, fit in with that, to where we can, you know, be a light in that area. But so many times it's like, even in the Christian world, it's flipped around, where the first thing you're doing is your occupation, and then maybe outreach or doing something for God is on the side. You know, so then that's why people ask you, like, well, why are you being a teacher? You know, you could have been a lawyer or whatever. But that's really not the point, right?
Right, definitely. I think that if you separate your occupation from like your Christian life, it becomes a very, like you become a weak Christian, you become a weak person too. I think being a Christian will show me how to be a better teacher. And if I chose the law path, it would show me how to be a better lawyer even, right? So I don't think that we should ever separate those two. We should use our occupation to be a sphere of influence, to witness to people. Because if, let's say I went to law school, I would be able to witness to people that maybe Wade wouldn't be able to witness to. But Wade, you're in an occupation where you can witness to people where I can't, right? So I think that we should definitely seek God's will and ask God, lead me to a place where I can witness the most for you, wherever that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I was looking at a passage, and it, you know, all throughout your story, the theme is, you know, sharing that light that you have, and just being able to witness to people where they are, you know, just by being a Christian. And I don't know if we can turn there. It's in Isaiah chapter 60. I just heard this at GYC. Well, I guess it was a while ago, but it's really stuck in my mind since then. Isaiah chapter 60, 1 through 3. And it says, "Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and the gross darkness the people. But the Lord shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. And the Gentiles shall come to the light, and kings to the brightness of thy rising." And it just really speaks to me kind of what you feel like your mission is about and what God has shown you to do. And it's really beautiful
Yes.
that you're embracing that.
Yeah. And it's amazing that that light doesn't come from us, right? It comes from God. Like he's giving us that already. We just have to let it shine. Yeah. I guess another verse that I'm thinking of that ties into my testimony is found in Romans chapter 8. And that's one of my favorite chapters throughout all of Scripture. Romans chapter 8. And Romans chapter 8, verse 38 to 39. I do have to kind of preface this a little bit because I think I was seeking affirmation from the world and my accomplishments, but I was also, on the flip side, seeking affirmation from people in the church. And even though I was doing ministry on campus and things like that, I found myself trying to earn God's love for me. And I couldn't really accept that. And so I think that I found myself saying, okay, Kristi, you're not doing all these sinful things, right? You're not going out drinking, you're not going out partying, all the stereotypical sins. But in my own heart, I knew that I was sinning because I knew that I was looking for affirmation. I wasn't really believing that Jesus' sacrifice was enough for me. And so I would work for God's grace. And this verse really solidifies for me kind of God's love letter to me, or to all of us. Romans chapter 8, verse 38, it says, "For I am persuaded that neither death nor life, nor angels nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other created thing shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord." This verse has taught me there is nothing that I can do to make God love me any less. There's nothing that I can do to make God love me any more. And that for me has really given me a different perspective on life. Because I'm so used to earning things, you know, and doing the right things to belong, to fit in, to be a good Adventist. But if it's not in my heart, I feel like it's hypocrisy.
Was there a Bible chapter or Bible story that really helped to sustain your Christian experience while at Berkeley that you kind of always referred back to? I know Brother Jeff mentioned Jonah, but like, was there a story or something that you could say, you know, that was my passage during my student year?
Yes, there is actually. It's found in 1 Kings, and it's a story of Elijah. And it's a pretty well-known story. It's at what I would say is Elijah's most, like the lowest point in his ministry, when after he calls fire down from heaven, and then Queen Jezebel says, "I'm gonna get you," and he runs away from her. And Elijah basically says, kill me now, God. I'm the only one that's left. Like, why are you sending me to this place? I did all of these things for you. And God says, Elijah, go on top of that mountain, and I'm gonna show you, basically, I will be there, right? So then, let's see, in verse 12. So 1 Kings chapter 19, in verse 12. Let's actually start in verse 11, if that's okay. Then God said, go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore into the mountains and broke the rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. Verse 12, and after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. So it's pretty amazing that the chapter prior, Elijah he calls fire down from heaven, and he does one of the greatest miracles in all of the Bible. And then he immediately tells God, like, wow, I'm so discouraged right now. I'm the only one that's left. Why are you having Queen Jezebel, like, go after me, right? He's doubting God. And God sends all of these amazing things, but God isn't found in any of those things. He's found in that very still, small voice. I think I've found myself a lot growing up, like, or even in college, wondering, okay, so many people have other amazing testimonies. There's Doug Batchelor, he finds a Bible in a cave. And like, there's David Asher, punk rocker, right? Where's Kristi's story? And I try to find a miracle almost. Like, I try to find God in the earthquake, in the wind, in the, what else did he send?
Fire.
In the fire, yes.
Yeah.
But it was that still small voice in that daily devotional walk with God where I realized, okay, that's my miracle. Like, that's God speaking to me. He doesn't need to do something big. And so in Berkeley, when I felt very alone, when I felt like, God, why are you sending me here? Where are all the other believers? He usually spoke to me. He always spoke to me in that still small voice. It wasn't something amazing, per se, but it was actually pretty awesome.
Like you were struck by lightning or saw 2 rainbows in one day.
Yeah, exactly.
I see. Wow. I think that's very comforting for many Christians who would like to know God, but they're not experiencing those miraculous events. So yeah, thank you. That's a great comfort for many of us.
No, I was just thinking when you were talking about the still small voice, sometimes we think there's a dichotomy. We think God is very small, he speaks in a small voice, it's very, sometimes you're not sure if he does this or does that, but then we see throughout like creation, his word, he spoke things into existence. He's still a very mighty and powerful God, and he can do mighty and powerful things in us. And so it's just like, let's put those things together. He's still a great, wonderful God that still chooses to speak to us in a small voice. And I love that part about him.
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, Kristi, for sharing that, because I think the other thing about this verse is that you listened to the voice. Like, God spoke, but our part in it is that you listened to him. And even through all the hardships and difficult choices that you had to make, you said, I'd rather do what God would want me to do rather than my own way. And so we thank you for coming to share your testimony and for sharing the difficulties as well as the blessings and the joy. And we just pray for you, continue to pray for you and what God has done in your life and what he will continue to do. And we also want to pray for you out there and encourage you to take your light and shine it where God would have you. Thanks for watching.